So it seems like Honda might be sandbagging those horsepower and torque numbers for the 2022 Civic SI. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Kevin, and guys, do me a favor, leave me down in the comments below what you think of the audio. We have a new microphone here. The other one I used to have pin on was, well, it took a crap on me, so I had to get something new. This one got good reviews, so we're gonna leave this down here and see how it does. But that being said, let's talk about some horsepower torque numbers from Honda and the new 2022 Civic SI. Now, factory rating numbers, Honda says this thing will put out 200 horsepower and 192 pound-feet of torque. Now, they say there's also an increase in torque between 1,800 and 5,000 RPMs, and it comes on 500 RPMs sooner. But those horsepower numbers could be a little on the low side. Hondata, which is an aftermarket tuning company who, obviously, judging by the name, specializes in Honda products, managed to get their hands on a 2022 SI and put it on a hub dyno. Now, I want to start off by saying that a hub dyno is most likely going to register a little bit higher than a chassis dyno for obvious reasons. You no longer have that extra weight and drag from the wheel and tire. So being directly bolted to the hub, you're going to get a little bit higher reading. Now, again, 200 horsepower, 192 pounds of torque on the factory rating. Now, on that hub dyno, Hondata did baseline the SI at 222 horsepower, 233 pound-feet of torque. That is significantly more than the factory rating. Now, if you look at the graph, you can see that they did mention that flatter torque curve and having it come on sooner, and you can definitely see that here on the graph. 500 RPM sooner, definitely. It looks like it's peaking out just over 2,000 RPMs. We'll say 2,200, 2,300. We have a big peak there, and it does flatten all the way across the RPM range, and it doesn't even start to dip off till you get pretty close to 5,500. We'll say 5,300 RPM when the torque curve starts to drop off. That's pretty impressive. Now, the horsepower side of things, it's a continuous climb all the way up and then levels off probably right around, it looks to be 5,800 before it starts to drop again. And that red line you see here, that's the 10th generation SI. So that's last generation SI, and you can see the difference in the torque curve and the horsepower. The horsepower between this generation and the last, between 4,500 RPM and redline, is pretty substantial. There's a big gap there. Now, in the mid-range, the new SI actually makes a little bit less power, but really jumps up once that VTEC kicks in. And yes, this new motor is VTEC. If you didn't know, you can even hear it on the dyno. It ramps up real quick and hard. And right about 4,500, and that's where it kicks in, and you can see it just take off. So 222 horsepower on a hub dyno, 233 pound-feet of torque. That is pretty impressive and very significant difference from the factory rating. Now, if that wasn't good enough, Hondata has been working on a tune that they haven't said is carb legal yet. It's pending, but they have tuned it. They did mention that they were not sure of the quality of gas in their tester. It was just shipped right to them. It's got 50 miles on it. And they did tune it. And it did say they made gains across the board in horsepower between 18 and 37 horsepower, 37 being at the peak, and torque ranged between 40 and 50 pound increase across the mid-range. Now, they said that biggest of that increase did come right after 2,000 RPMs and ran all the way up to about 5,500 RPM. So that's a pretty significant jump in a pretty wide range between 2 and 5,500. From the torque gains that they're talking about in the article, just over 2,000 is where you're going to see such a significant driving difference. And we'll throw a little clip of it here on the dyno. Now you can see right after 4,500 RPM that thing really did jump up. That's where the VTEC's going to kick in. After 5,000 RPM, that's where this car really seems to want to wake up and be. But if you are familiar with the VTEC engine, then you know that's nothing new. Now they also said there is a lot more potential in this engine, so they're kind of curious to see where things would go with a bigger turbo or even just some simple exhaust work. I'm definitely very curious about that myself. I'm very intrigued by this new SI. I mean, the styling is absolutely phenomenal. I love the looks of it. The interior is top notch. It's very high class. I just think they knocked this out of the park. They really did, especially now that we find out they're sandbagging numbers. This is going to be pretty impressive. And that's not to mention all of the Type R suspension parts that this car is incorporated with. So this is going to handle significantly better than the last generation SI. So I want to know what your thoughts are with these new numbers, both from the factory and with the tuned version. So just a quick recap between the 10th and 11th generation SIs, the 10th generation car made 201 horsepower at 5,750 RPMs and 210 pound-feet of torque. This new one has dynoed 222 horsepower at 5,700 RPM and 233 pound-feet of torque at 2,770 RPM. So we're looking at about a 21 horsepower increase and about 42 extra pound-feet of torque. Very impressive in my eyes. I want to know what your thoughts are. Drop a like on the video for me while you're at it. Let YouTube know you're enjoying the content. Let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your way out if you haven't already. I'm Kevin, and I'll see you in the next upload.